Overwhelmed by the nuance, overwhelmed.
Is it alright if I can't move ahead? The speed is too high. Well, I can follow your stride. Life's not a race. I don't want to, I'm not prepared to. I will lose you. I've been running, I'm exhausted. I feel naked. There's no time to complain. Flying, you're my side. You're gonna win again. I smile off of my face. Even at night, you don't want to rest. You run and steal the heart. Useless. And I do wonder if you will stop someday. And would you bother if they're not on their way? I've been running, I'm exhausted. I feel naked. There's no time to complain. Flying, you're excited.
Overwhelmed by the nuances of the business world, you are surrounded by a plethora of questions. Is there a one-stop solution for my business queries? How can I meet the who's who of the business industry? Is there a platform where I can showcase my products and services to the world? Is it possible to access all the global tender information and business leads at one place? Who can give my business the financial support it requires? Here is the solution you have been searching for. CII presents mycii.in, an online business resource center and a unique interactive business platform which has got a large base of subscribers. mycii.in gives you a platform to multiply, update, seek and enrich your knowledge so that your business goes places. Multiply your business prospects. With access to over 5,000 global live tenders on display every day. Get multiple opportunities, upcoming business initiatives and business leads. MyCII's Finance Facilitation Center backs up many businesses with financial support. Finance Facilitation Center is one-stop resource point for attending to the needs of the SMEs by bridging the gap between banks and SMEs, sharing information about SMEs schemes and providing online training programs on numerous economy and business prospects. Online B2B Zone offers Excel growth prospects and lets industries derive value by accessing info about online B2B meetings, partners, trends in the market and verified tested industry catalogs. mycii.in keeps the industries updated with up-to-date accurate information about government notifications issued by state and the center, policies and investment trackers, schemes for SMEs and economy updates. What's more, you can also seek advice and guidance from experts on business structure, market intelligence, competitive scenario, legal aspects and industry-specific inputs. Also, with online communities section, you get the opportunity to be a part of various experts, functional and sectoral communities which facilitate active discussions, expert guidance and peer-to-peer interaction. mycii.in also enriches your business knowledge and offers various special services for the MNCs and SMEs. You can access more than 20,000 knowledge resources, valuable webinar recordings, more than 1,000 publications, and sectoral vision documents to intensify your knowledge. Apart from all these, MyCII's e-events library lets the members access missed conferences and events digitally, take advantage of business networking and meeting relevant people across the industry. And that's not all. Over 16,000 minutes of online masterclasses concluded by experts on world-class manufacturing, compliances, export and import, and many others enable industries to acquire the leading guidance and precision. With My Account section, business users can not only customize their company profile, but their preferences in terms of industry, country, state, frequency of the updates and alerts as well. Not only this, mycii.in delivers personalized and customized alerts in your inbox, which makes it easy for the members to update themselves. Quite rightly then, mycii.in is an online business resource center that provides a world of opportunities for industries. Download CII app in your phone and get access to knowledge, information updates, networking and finance facilitation through mycii.in. mycii.in provides unlimited access to the CII members so that all the departments can get their hands on relevant information. For more information, log on to mycii.in today and change the way you do business.
Dear all, a very good afternoon to all our participants from India. A very good morning to all our participants from Europe. I warmly welcome all of you to this Conclave Green Hydrogen Economies, a Belgo-Indian conclave, which is organized to explore further possible technological partnerships between India and Belgium. A special thanks to our eminent representatives from Belgium and India, particularly the Honorable Minister of Energy, Belgium, Ms. Tinner van de Straten, Mr. Amitabh Kant, CEO, Niti Aayog, India. I appreciate their time for giving us very critical and important inputs. Conclave partners, speakers from Belgium and Indian companies, thank you for taking time out today to address this very important topic, and we'll look forward to your views going ahead. I would now like to request our participants to cooperate with us for some house rules. Please put your mics on mute unless it is your turn to speak. Please type your comments or questions in the chat or QA section to the right of your screen. For any questions, you may also use the icon to raise your hand before you are invited to ask your question. If you face any internet connectivity or bandwidth problems, please turn off your videos until you speak or present. We will now proceed with the agenda, and I would like to invite Mr. Pierre-Emmanuel Brusselsmans, the Consul General of the Kingdom of Belgium in Mumbai, to deliver the opening remarks. Over to you, Mr. Brusselsmans.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tyagarajan. Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to welcome you all in this first Belgo-Indian conclave on green hydrogen economies. To our speakers, to the panelists, and to most of the audience, this subject is, of course, not something new. But when we look at the developments worldwide, we see that the timing of our event could not have been better. Everybody wants to get into green hydrogen. Multinationals announce billions of US dollars of investments. Countries and governments develop strategies and policies as hydrogen, and especially green hydrogen, is gaining momentum. Indeed, green hydrogen has the potential to replicate all benefits of hydrocarbons with net zero carbon emission. No wonder green hydrogen is now being considered one of the essential parts of the new energy mix, with a goal to lower carbon emissions, increase sustainability, and mitigate climate change. India is clearly taking a lead in this domain. On Independence Day 2021, the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced a national hydrogen mission for the country, and at the UN General Assembly a few weeks ago, he set forth the aim of India to increase the current renewable installed capacity from 100 gigawatts to 450 gigawatts by 2030. This will help the environment as well as contribute to the energy security and independence of India. To stimulate this transition, various schemes, incentives, and demand mandates are under consideration across ministries. This also includes production-linked incentives for electrolyzer manufacturing, as announced by the Honorable Minister of Power. Leading companies in India have joined the challenge and have announced their own targets. Reliance, for example, of which we will hear later, has set its goal on making green hydrogen the most affordable fuel by bringing down its cost below $1 per kilogram. Mr. Ambani is putting his money where his mouth is, as 4 megafactories are already under construction for an estimated investment of $10 billion. Others have joined the fray. Aggregated, they plan to invest more than $30 billion over the next 10 years in renewable energy production in India. And green hydrogen will take a big share in these investments. Ladies and gentlemen, the timing of this Indo-Belgian conclave is also quite appropriate when we look at our bilateral relations. Back in 1947, Belgium was one of the first countries to recognize the newly independent Republic of India. And in 2022, we will celebrate the 75 years of our diplomatic relationship. The ties we have are strong, sound, and ever deepening. Over the years, they have broadened and adapted to encompass all kinds of new areas of mutual interest. The fight against climate change and the development of new technologies to tackle this challenge are now part of our common agenda. As we speak, Belgium and the Indian Ministry of New and Renewable Energy are negotiating the extension of an MOU between our both countries, and a joint working group is expected to meet at the end of this month in Brussels to discuss and foster concrete collaborations in the field of renewable energy. Amongst the areas of cooperation that will be high on the agenda, green hydrogen is one of them, along with offshore wind and the next generation of batteries. Furthermore, as the pandemic is receding, we are happy to announce that next year, a Belgian trade mission on clean energies and clean technologies organized by our trade agencies will come to India. The possibilities for collaboration to our mutual benefit are sheer endless, and the challenge ahead calls for swift, I would say decisive action nationally and internationally. The high level of participation to this conclave is also a testimony to the urgency of the transition needed and the great potential for bilateral collaboration. I am extremely happy that the Belgian Minister of Energy, the Honorable Minister Tine van der Straten, and the CEO of NITI-IO, the Indian governmental think tank on sustainable development, Shrikanji, have agreed to give us their vision on how to develop green hydrogen economies and the challenges ahead. The Honorable Minister van der Straten became the Belgian Minister of Energy in October 2020. Before that, she was a member of the House of Representatives and held the position of Deputy Chairman of the Commission for Energy and Climate. Previously, she has gained an extensive expertise in the energy sector as a lawyer and partner of Blixt, a law firm specialized in innovative projects in the energy sector. Today, the Belgian government is defending its State of the Union and next year's budget in Parliament. Until the very last moment, the Honourable Minister was hoping to join us live, but this has unfortunately not been possible. To make sure that she could share her vision with us, with the panelists, and with the audience, she has therefore recorded her intervention. Without further ado, let us listen to the Honourable Minister van der Straten. Thank you very much.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, about 15 years ago, our dream was to install a wind farm in the North Sea. Now, Belgium is number 5 worldwide in electricity production from offshore wind, and a global leader in this technology. You could say that our wind farms are a national pride, exactly like our beer, our chocolate, and our Belgian fries. But it's not enough. Our ambitions don't stop here. Offshore wind is only one part of the solution in the climate challenge. Fighting the climate crisis requires ambitious targets and impactful acts to meet these ambitions. Belgium subscribes to the European engagement to become the first climate-neutral continent by 2050 and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030. A paradigm shift from a fossil fuel approach to a sustainable and technology-driven energy supply is required in order to see our ambitions materialize. Clean and affordable energy for all are therefore the key words. Walking the talk is no longer an option. It is a necessity. The challenge is big. Our dependency on fossil fuels remain high. So is our energy consumption. Belgium is a small industrialized country with high energy needs in order to meet the demand from households and industries. Investing in own renewable energy production is the only way to decrease this dependency. But our territory and natural resources are limited. And this has led us to invest in international partnerships and a strongly interconnected energy infrastructure. And this makes us today a major electricity and gas hub in Europe, which provide us with opportunities to lead the energy transition. The energy transition is not based on green electrons only. Green molecules will be part of the solution too. Renewable hydrogen will play a crucial role in decarbonizing difficult-to-abate sectors, as well as in offering new import and export opportunities for renewable energy. Today, we import oil products. Tomorrow, we will ship the sunshine and exchange wind energy in liquid form. Belgium is therefore committed to making best use of its central location at the heart of the European industries and of its well-developed gas infrastructure in order to make the import of green molecules to Europe possible. We are at this moment studying the conversion possibilities of specific assets in our LNG terminal in Zeebrugge and planning to repurpose part of our natural gas network for the deployment of a dedicated backbone for transport of hydrogen across our country. Many other challenges are also emerging, such as the certification of green molecules in order to guarantee the renewable source and the establishment of a robust hydrogen market. This exciting hydrogen topic is far from being closed, and I'm personally committed to contribute as much as I can in establishing a coherent and favorable context for this development. On top of production, transport and import infrastructure, the deployment of hydrogen as an energy source also requires to innovate, develop and integrate the hydrogen technologies in new innovative solutions to reduce costs. And in this field, Belgium is and wants to remain a pioneer. As I said earlier, Belgium's strategic advantage is not the presence of raw materials, nor the abundance of important renewable energy sources. Yes, we have potential. At the same time, a solar panel in Belgium will never yield as much electricity as in India. Nevertheless, we benefit from experienced, innovative industrial players, as well as from knowledge centers mastering the state-of-the-art technologies. Many other actors in our country are active in integrating the best innovations in ready-to-use products such as hydrogen buses or backup power generators. We have expertise and we have passion. We are not afraid to innovate. We have the ambition to continue in this leading role in hydrogen technologies and to spread these innovations in order to make the energy transition happen for all, everywhere. But innovation and goodwill are not enough to supply our economies with hydrogen. As you know, the production of renewable molecules requires at least two main elements: renewable energy from wind or sun, and water. And to this you add know-how, partnerships and a strong vision. Here are the ingredients to achieve the energy transition. Belgium and India could bring these precious richnesses together. Moreover, India is also taking a leading role in the large-scale supply of renewable energy in order to support the global energy transition. And I am looking forward to leading India's hydrogen mission as announced by the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi. I believe that our two countries together can build a win-win story by joining forces in order to build a global hydrogen value chain. Although alone we may go faster, together we go further. A fast and global energy transition requires new energy paradigms and partnerships. So let's invest together in alternatives before we are out of resources. Let's invest today in our energy infrastructure of tomorrow. Together, let's partner all around the globe because tomorrow starts today. I thank you for your attention.
Ladies and gentlemen, while we missed having the Honorable Minister present here with us, we really appreciate the fact that she took the time out to share such an informative video with her thoughts. Her views were indeed insightful and clearly indicate that Belgium is one of the pioneering leaders on developing the green energy. Few words that she mentioned are important. It is the expertise that Belgium brings and the ambition and the passion, and most importantly, she mentioned that she is personally committed to this mission. We certainly look forward to more collaborations and development between India and Belgium in strengthening the hydrogen economy. This event itself is conceived and organized with that goal. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kant was called for an official visit to Jammu and Kashmir. Since he was not sure of the internet connectivity and since he wanted to speak on this topic that is of immense interest to him, he has also kindly recorded his speech, especially for this conclave. Mr. Amitabh Kant is presently the CEO of Niti Aayog, that is the National Institution for Transforming India. He is a member of the Indian Administrative Service, IAS, Kerala Cadre 1980 batch. Niti Aayog is the premier policy think tank of the Government of India, providing directional and policy inputs. Apart from designing the strategic and long-term policies and programs for the Government of India, Niti Aayog also provides relevant technical advice to the center, states, and the union territories. Mr. Amitabh Kant is also a member of the steering board, World Economic Forum, for shaping the future of production systems. Mr. Kant's video will cover India's approach to green hydrogen, its policy perspectives, and investment opportunities. I now request for his video to be played.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be participating in this very unique conference on the green hydrogen economies, and this is the Belgio-Indian Conclave. And first of all, let me thank Ms. Tenet van der Straten, the Honorable Minister of Energy. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be participating in this very unique conference on the green hydrogen economies, and this is the Belgio-Indian Conclave. And first of all, let me thank Ms. Tenet van der Straten, the Honorable Minister of Energy, Belgium, for taking the initiative to promote India-Belgium cooperation in the energy sector. Please let me also congratulate the Belgian Consulate of India and its Consul General for organizing this very important event on green hydrogen. Ladies and gentlemen, the awareness about the effects of climate change and collective global urgency to decarbonize all the sectors has never been higher. This has led to soaring valuations of green companies and challenging business models for carbon-intensive products. It has become very clear that the time to act is now. And this is no more a problem of the future. India, despite being a fast-growing nation with an enormous appetite for energy, is doing its part on the ground with its unwavering commitment for the 450 gigawatt of renewable electricity target. The UN Emission Gap Report 2020 endorsed that India, with its current policies, is the only G20 country to achieve its NDC commitments for end of century global warming goal of 2 degrees centigrade. Having said that, it has become clear that the end of century global warming goal of 2 degrees centigrade is not enough, and we will have to target 1.5 degrees centigrade to avoid climate disasters. India, as the second most vulnerable country to climate change, is looking to double down on its world-leading climate fight through a clean molecule, and the clean molecule is hydrogen. Partnership with Belgium is critical for India, as Belgium is already one of the leaders of global hydrogen technologies, with Belgian companies having significant presence in the entire value chain. In addition, Belgium in many ways is also the gateway to Europe, both through its port and for its position as the political epicenter of European Union. With countries and companies growing net zero emission targets, hydrogen has started witnessing new momentum amongst various nations. At least 43 countries have now set up or are setting up either strategies for hydrogen economy or roadmaps. This is because electricity contributes only a fraction, less than 20% for India of the overall energy basket. The rest 80% depends on fossil fuels like oil, gas, and coal. Some of the sectors which utilize the solid and liquid fuels cannot be powered by electricity due to technical factors. And this is where hydrogen has a very important and critical role to play. Hydrogen will help India and the world to decarbonize the most difficult sectors. These sectors are called hard to abate sectors such as steel, copper, fertilizer, cement, oil refining, and long distance transport. Addressing the nation on 75th Independence Day, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had announced the National Hydrogen Mission with the aim to make India a hub for the production and export of green hydrogen. This is geared to make India energy independent before completing 100 years of independence, as India spends over 160 billion of foreign exchange every year for energy imports, and this is likely to double in the next 15 years. Green hydrogen will leverage India's most important natural resource, and that is abundant solar and wind resources, and will fast track India towards zero energy imports by 2047. In addition, India has abundant land, a large coastline, and a world-class clean energy project execution capabilities to become a global hub for green hydrogen and green hydrogen-derived products. The world is mandating and demanding green products with mechanisms such as European Union carbon tariff. The green hydrogen provides us with a unique opportunity not only to reduce our emission and energy imports, but also will help us to build scale and export capabilities in high value green products such as green steel, green ammonia, and high tech components such as electrolyzers. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me the opportunity to explain India's ambitions in green hydrogen. India has a no questions asked policy of supporting only zero carbon green hydrogen. Though still in discussion, India aims to create demand for at least 60 gigawatt of electrolysis capacity by 2030, which will be one of the largest in the world. Sectors such as oil refining, fertilizers, and natural gas will see significant uptake in green hydrogen. India will incentivize the creation of 25 gigawatt of electrolyzer manufacturing capacity in next 5 to 7 years to provide affordable and reliable electrolyzers to the world. India has an uncompromising vision of making India to support its hydrogen vision. India also aims to be a R&D hub for green hydrogen technologies for both Indian and multinational companies. India is already the largest contract R&D destination in the world. With ambitious R&D initiatives, India is expected to catalyze significant venture capital interest in hydrogen. India is also the second largest steel manufacturing country in the world. We are exploring ways to create the world's largest green steel capacity in the world. India will lead the mainstreaming of green steel for the world. India's ambition definitely requires a win-win partnership with many of our friends, particularly Belgium. These are the areas where Indo-Belgian cooperation can help the world decarbonize at a speed and scale required. Firstly, mobilizing green finance. Paris Agreement was negotiated under a promise of $100 billion per year climate finance from developed countries to emerging economies. It is important that this promise doesn't remain just as that, a promise. Indian clean energy industry is the third largest in the world and one of the important destinations for global green finance from Middle East, East Asia, and USA. The commercial green finance from the EU region will also be critical to realize India's clean hydrogen development. EU has requested India to raise its climate ambition. It is important for the world that promises of green finance to India is realized. Belgium must play a significant role in mobilizing green finance from the EU region. Secondly, manufacturing and innovation partnerships. India is a country with safe intellectual property regime and a culture of trust-based technology partnerships. I invite Belgian companies to take advantage of India's manufacturing incentives to make in India for the world. I also invite all of you to consider India as a destination of affordable R&D at scale. Thirdly, standards and labeling. Global standards take decades to develop, but green hydrogen cannot wait that long. India and Belgium should take proactive partnership to accelerate and lead global standard and labeling protocols for green hydrogen. Ladies and gentlemen, with proactive collaboration between innovators, entrepreneurs, and government, green hydrogen has the potential to drastically reduce CO2 emissions, fight climate change, and put India on the path towards net zero energy imports. This will also help India and Belgium create high value green products, helping India to industrialize without the need to carbonize. We look forward to a collaborative partnership with Belgium in this regard. Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be participating in this.
Ladies and gentlemen, we witnessed there is a lot of alignment and synergy between what the Honorable Minister of Energy, Belgium, spoke and Mr. Khan spoke. He mentioned that the partnership is critical, and he detailed how there is enormous potential for both the countries to collaborate. Mr. Kant is not present here, but I would like to ask his team to pass on our gratitude to him. We are certain that with his leadership, India is moving closer to its goal of a green revolution and enhanced sustainability, and we look forward to such collaborations. We now move to the next session, which has presentations of pilot projects by Belgium companies, and which will be followed by a panel discussion. The session will be moderated by Mr. Gautam Raj VS. Mr. Gautam Raj VS is currently a future energy leader, a fellow of World Energy Council. He also freelances with Niti Aayog and the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy for the hydrogen initiatives. In the past, he has held the title of Director, Hydrogen Initiatives for Customized Energy Solutions, a US-based consulting firm. Prior to this, he was part of energy team in Niti Aayog, where under the mentorship of the CEO, he played a central role in designing battery and solar manufacturing roadmap and led the drafting of upcoming hydrogen policy paper by Niti Aayog. He is an Alistair Scholar from European Commission's EM Plus program on energy storage and conversion. He has worked in Umicore, Korea, and in the United Nations Climate Innovation Team in Vienna, and an electrolyzer company based in New York. I now invite Mr. Gautam Raj to take over the session. Over to
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Mr. Tyagarajan. It's for a very kind introduction. And it was a great session. I hope you can hear me. Yeah. So we had excellent two addresses by Honorable Minister of Energy of Belgium and also Honorable CEO of Niti Aayog and my former mentor, Mr. Kant. So both India and Belgium has ambitious targets and aspirations for green hydrogen, and we are natural allies. And for this particular session, we have three world-class experts really in the heart of our hydrogen transition. We have experts who are not only just doing things on theory, but who are doing things on ground. We have experts from Tractable, we have expert from a Demo Group, and we have expert from John Cockrell. To begin with, I would like to invite our expert, Mr. Seven Gothals from Tractable. Mr. Seven Gothals started his professional career in 1994 in Tractable. He has over 25 years of more than 2 decades of experience in energy projects of different kind. He now manages the business development and sales activities for energy for the group. And in this position, he especially focuses on hydrogen and responsible for the strategy of the group to be a front runner in developing hydrogen ecosystems for a carbon neutral future. And his intervention in this webinar will cover Tractable's vision, challenges, and feedback, and first on-ground pilot projects and with potential application and relevance for India. Mr. Gothels, the floor is yours. Please enlighten us.
So, Arun, can you share the presentation, please? So first of all, I would like to thank the Belgium as the Indian diplomacy for giving us this opportunity to share with you our vision and how we see the potential for hydrogen in future. I would also like to present to you my colleague Arun Verma, based in India, who is one of our business developers in the country, focusing on developing green hydrogen projects. So next slide, Aaron. Aaron, please, can you show the next slides? Aaron, can you share the next slides? So while waiting for
the reshare. Yeah.
So perhaps first shortly introducing the Tractable, while Arun goes for the next slides. First of all, Tractable is an engineering consultant company. We focus on 4 fields. From one side, it's purely energy, going from traditional thermal energy based on gas-fired power plants to renewable projects. Secondly, we have water projects. Thirdly, we have urban projects. And then also we have, let's say, we also have nuclear projects, mainly in support of the Belgium and French nuclear power plants. Our activities, we have activities worldwide. Next slide, please, Aaron. Our activities are worldwide. We have activities with a turnover in 2020 over almost close to 6 million euros. And you can see on this slide where we have activities already in green hydrogen. You can see that there are mainly in Europe, but also quite some, let's say, in the southern hemisphere, going from Latin America over South Africa to Australia. Arun, if you then can shortly present Tractable in India. Please, Arun.
Yeah, thank you, Sven. Tractable has been present in India since 2000, and we presently have 600 employees, and we are serving the Indian sector in energy, urban, as well as water. We are presently located in the NCR region in Gurgaon and regional office in Gujarat with approximately 40 site offices. Sven, you
okay.
Take on from here, please.
Yeah, next slide. So if you look to the hydrogen value chain, we see that finally, if you speak about hydrogen projects, and this is really our vision, that you need to cover the whole value chain. You need to go from renewables, you need to go over transmission and distribution. For sure, then you have the particular hydrogen generation with the power to hydrogen and the compression and storage. But then again, you have transport and you have different applications. Like you may see, we see things in mobility, things in power and heat, things in industry, and things in chemicals. For first applications in India, we think that probably it will be in mobility, probably it will be in oil refinery, and probably it will also be in ammonia production for fertilizer. And for this, we would like to share with you some examples of projects we did worldwide. This is the first project, Green Hydrogen for Ammonia Plant. It's a project in Australia. We started this project in 2019, starting from, let's say, a conceptual design and a strategic study of what could be the perfect fitting between the green energy resources in Australia. This was solar, and how to optimize them in order to produce green hydrogen and then delivering it to a existing fertilizer facility. For the time being, we just started the realization of the project, where we will give support to Engie and Yara. Next steps will then be, and this is something that you will see in a lot of the hydrogen projects, is that most of the companies start with let's say, a smaller scale project. This project is 10 megawatt, but that there is really a target of scaling up to gigawatt scale. Project durations from, let's say, inception up to the gigawatt scale is probably something that will take over 10 years. So in this project, we will substitute a small portion of the gray hydrogen by green hydrogen in order to test how green hydrogen goes, but also to see what is the impact of the variability of renewable energies on a constant energy need of green hydrogen as input for the ammonia process. Next slide. The second project is a project in France, linked to a biorefinery of Total. It's in the south of France. So when you say south of France, it's again, and you see it in the picture, it's again based on renewable energy, renewable solar energy. This time we speak about a 40 megawatt project. So the size is already a little bit bigger. And for this project, we did, for the time being, let's say, we did again optimization. And this is really important to see how you balance PV, how you balance electrolyzers, how you balance the, say, continuous hydrogen supply. We did also particular energetic studies, because if we speak about small megawatts, for sure, everything that's high voltage is not of the most concern. Definitely speak about 40 megawatt, but also if we will go beyond to the gigawatt projects, the whole electrical network might become an issue and really ask for particular attention. In this project, feasibility study is done. Advanced engineering studies were also realized. Next step will be FEED studies, where then we will need to see how we can exactly do the call for tender and then go to a realization stage. This project started in 2020. Probably we will have project operational 2023, 2024. Next slide, please. This is something then a little bit not at industrial scale, but rather at the regional scale. It's a study we do in Germany for the municipality of Frankfurt. And there we look to let's say, a hydrogen ecosystem for regional mobility. We'll see how we can generate locally green hydrogen, but then distribute the hydrogen all over a certain region in order to feed, to produce and to feed, to have hydrogen refueling stations for, let's say, heavy transport mobility. And you can see it's a kind of ecosystem that we develop, and we see how to transport then also the fuel or the hydrogen under tube trails from a central generation up to local offtakes. And then the last slide. This is something on which we are quite proud. It's a collaboration between Tractable and Anglo-American in Chile, where we could produce our first green hydrogen in Chile. And this was inaugurated by the president of Chile 1 month ago. And then what we also think, and this is really important, this is also, next slide please, is R&D, where, and this is on particular applications for the North Sea. Probably it might also be applicable for India, where you look on how we can join offshore wind farms. Like Minister Tinne van der Straten indicated, Belgium is really one of the countries who is a front runner in offshore winds. And here we try to see how we can combine offshore winds with offshore hydrogen production in order to further increase the volume of hydrogen that may be available. So thank you all. This was the short contribution from Tractable.
Thank you so much, Mr. Seven and Mr. Arun. It was an excellent presentation on a real-world project. I'm sure we have a lot of questions. We would come to you for some insightful questions at the end of the session. In the meantime, I would like to invite our next speaker, Mr. Rafael Tillaert, Executive Vice President, Renewables and Hydrogen, John Cockrell. Mr. Rafael is in charge of renewable energies and hydrogen at John Cockrell and is a member of the group XCOM Extended. He overlooks the company activities in hydrogen, concentrated solar, thermal storage, and integrated renewable solutions. Mr. Tillaert is an experienced candidate with 20 years of experience in the energy sector and a former top executive of NG, a global energy behemoth. He has managed projects and developed business across the world and natural gas in power and natural gas value chains. is a recognized industry leader in renewable solutions with a background from consulting with strong credentials across the energy industry. I would like to invite Mr. Tillard to share his experience in building John Cockerell, especially in the electrolysis industry across the world, and what it means for India. Mr. Rafael, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here together with you. It's an honor to participate to this event, and I would like to thank the organizer for the event. Let me start with a few words to introduce John Cockerell as a company. So if we can flip to the next slide. John Cockerell is a company which is fully private. We are a company with a turnover between 1 and 2 billion euro, depending on the years. We are very international. We are present in 50 countries around the world. And we have more than 2 centuries of existence. We are a technology company active in a range of sectors, from industrial sector to defense industry to environment and to energy. Next slide, please. India is not new to us. We have been in India for several decades. Our local subsidiary was established in 1986, has more than 750 people. We have 2 workshops. You can see some pictures. The company is led by a colleague of mine who is connected today, Vivek Bide. And the company is active in a range of fields, from processing lines to rolling mills, with a wide range of skills, from engineering, R&D, project management, of course, manufacturing. So, of course, India is a very important country to us. It's a country which we know well, and it's a country which is very much a priority focus for John Cockerell. Next slide. In energy and renewable energy, we are active in several technologies. We are one of the leaders in solar, not PV, but concentrated solar. And you see a picture in the middle. These are projects with many mirrors concentrating the sun energy. And the beauty of the solution is to produce baseload power with only solar energy. We are active in battery solution. We are active in offshore, onshore wind, and finally in hydrogen. So let's move on to the next slide to zoom on hydrogen. In hydrogen, in fact, today, John Cockerell is currently the largest manufacturer of electrolyzers in the world. In 2020, we had a worldwide market share of 20%. We produce alkaline electrolyzers, and we have several decades of experience in electrolysis, in hydrogen, in pressurized equipment, in gas treatment. We have more than 1,000 references in more than 30 countries where we have installed electrolyzer in a wide range of sectors, from chemical industry, steel industry, power plants, and others. Our electrolyzer stack are going from fairly small scale to the largest stacks available today in the world. Our largest stack have 5 megawatts capacity per stack, and we have more than 30 references of these stacks. We focus very much on large-scale hydrogen application. We are working currently on several projects which are well above 100 megawatts. As an example, in fact, as we speak now, we are commissioning one project of 95 megawatts in China. So for us, it is already today pretty large in scale, what we are doing, what we are installing in 2021. We have committed to invest 100 million euro on hydrogen, on R&D, on new manufacturing plants, and other strategic move on hydrogen. And then finally, we also have solution for hydrogen mobility. Next slide. A lot going on in terms of R&D, in terms of improving our technology. We strongly believe in alkaline electrolyzer technology. We believe it is the solution, the only solution which is mature enough, which can be scalable to deliver large projects in the short and medium term. So when one talks about large-scale industrial application for hydrogen, we believe only alkaline can deliver it. We see that the alkaline technology has still quite some room for further improvement in energy efficiency, in the size of the stack. The 5 megawatt stack we have today will go very soon to 7.5 megawatt per stack, to 10 megawatt beyond, and this is just in a few years. We are also working, all stack have an output at 30 bars, which is a very strong advantage. And we are working to increase the pressure of all our electrolyzer line. We are also working to provide CE certified, ASME certified equipment from our different plants, including from the plant we have today in China. Next slide. In terms of manufacturing capabilities, today we have a plant in China of a capacity of 350 megawatts annual production. It's a state-of-the-art brand new factory, which was inaugurated in 2019. We are also building a new gigawatt factory between France and Belgium. The plant will produce its first electrolyzer in 2023. And beyond that, we are looking at installing additional manufacturing capacity in other regions and countries in the world. And of course, India is certainly a country we are looking at today very closely. And to close, my last slide, if you can switch to the next slide. Yes, just some example of projects on which we are working today. The first one is a 75 megawatt project on which we are teaming up with ENGIE and with Carmeuse. And here the idea is to combine hydrogen with a flow of CO2 coming from the lime production. And combining hydrogen with CO2, we will produce e-methane. Next example of project is a project which we have commissioned last year in Taiwan, a 25 megawatt project with Air Liquide for the semiconductor industry. A third example of project is a hydrogen mobility project to supply buses around a big airport in Belgium. And the final project on the slide here is a project we are developing with partners for the city of Barcelona in Spain. So this is a massive, large-scale project with a wide range of application around the port, going to supply industrial facilities within the port and mobility around the port. I will stop here, and of course, I will be very open to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Tilla. It was an extensive presentation. I'm sure a lot of our audience is closely looking at your technologies as a consumer or a partner. Let me come to you for some of, already I got a lot of questions for you from the audience. Let me come back to you on the end of the session. In the meantime, let me invite and introduce our next speaker, Mr. Herbert Joost, is General Manager, Green Hydrogen for the DEME Group. Mr. Joost leads DEME's green hydrogen developments in the Middle East and Europe. He has worked in the energy industry, especially in Europe, for more than 30 years. He started his career in Germany as a consultant for energy consumers, followed by Rurgas in Essen. He then made a transition to an asset development and power markets in multiple countries, along with power stations and gas installations. Mr. Joost has extensive experience in both onshore and offshore wind development. I invite Mr. Joost to cover his group's hydrogen journey with a spotlight on their port project in Oman. Mr. Joost, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon to India. I hope everyone can see the presentation and hear me okay.
We can see you, hear you okay.
Yeah, fine. I'll take you as the one who confirms. Thank you. First of all, a very, very quick compliment to Raphael Thillot. He exactly, almost up to the second, stuck to his 7 minutes time limit. I will try to do the same. I'm not sure I can do it in seven minutes. So we have actually, as DEME, a lot in common with John Cockerill in the sense that we also have more than 5,000 employees, that we also have more than 2 billion turnover per year, and that we also can look back to a second century of our existence. However, DEME, where DEME is different, is DEME is of course more known as one of the world-leading contractors in marine engineering, offshore wind, but also dredging. But I'm talking to you as a developer and investor. That's also a scope that DEME has. We invest in offshore wind power. We invest in infrastructure, and we're also going to invest in green hydrogen. So today I'm going to compress in this 7 to 8 minute time slot the fact that the EU has an enormous need to import green molecules because own renewable generation will never cover the needs for the hydrogen if the decarbonization goes on as planned. Secondly, where do the green molecules or the green hydrogen actually come from when the EU imports it? Thirdly, why we think Oman is a very good location to produce green hydrogen and green ammonia. Then I will come to the key features of our project in Oman, which, by the way, is not a pilot project. It's far too big to be a pilot. I would more call it a lighthouse project, sort of guiding the way a bit. And finally, a few remarks about the future Indian hydrogen economy, if time allows. So the first point is that the EU imports of green hydrogen or green hydrogen equivalent can easily reach 100 million tons per year. There is Belgium, we heard it already, right in the center of it. The demand through the Belgian ports, mainly Antwerp, of course, where we are based, can reach 25 million tons per year towards 2050. The same for Rotterdam, the same for Germany. And of course, the EU is not the only region in the world where large-scale imports have to happen on a massive scale. It's also Japan. And then also, of course, India, the subject of our conclave today, a massive undertaking. I don't need to explain to you the use of hydrogen. I think this has been already covered by the speakers today. Some of you will have seen this map before, originally from the International Energy Agency. I have several versions of it. I mean, the basic version of it is that where there is enough sun and wind, those are potentially locations for a competitive setup of green hydrogen. It's always the same story. There is South America, there's Chile, there is the Middle East, there is India, and then there is Australia, basically. Everyone so far thinks about the magic $2 per kilogram of hydrogen as a measure of how competitive you can produce green hydrogen. I am well aware of the recent announcement of the Reliance Industries, of the chairman, that the ambition goes actually further in India to 1 kilogram. And if you take the recent hike in energy cost and gas cost, then the competition to green hydrogen, which is gray hydrogen, has just got enormously expensive. So more as a joke, maybe we don't need to go to 1 kilogram to be competitive to gray. That depends on how the gas prices develop. Okay, we go to the next slide, which is zooming in onto Oman. Oman is a region which has actually during the summer 6 months very, very strong thermal winds. On a yearly average, it's probably around 9 meters per second or even more mean wind speed, which is the same as, for instance, the rough North Sea around Europe has. And it has, of course, sufficient solar irradiation. You need both to come to a decent amount of full load hours, which is one selection criteria. If you produce just pure hydrogen, then the upstream cost, the renewable generation cost, make up to 75% of the total hydrogen cost. If you, however, produce after hydrogen green ammonia, which we are going to do in Oman, then of course the capex part of the ammonia plant goes in there, and the ratio will be more like 60-40, right? 60% electricity generation costs and 40% capex. What we are trying to do is to make full use of full load hours. But before I come to that, just very, very quickly, the vision for Oman is like the vision of many countries, to develop a whole Omani hydrogen economy. None of those things are there yet. There is no network, there is no hydrogen-based mobility, there is no hydrogen in buildings. All of this is yet to come. We want to play our part in it by coming up with our lighthouse project in the high port of Duqm. First, we need to produce. And Duqm phase 1 that I'm talking about today is more about export, export to Europe, export to Japan, potentially also export to India. It is very close to India. India is definitely closer than the EU or Japan. It's about EU is about 5,500 sea miles away through the Suez Canal, and the same distance roughly to Japan. We will in phase 2 scale up to gigawatt size, and by then the beginnings of an Oman hydrogen economy would also be there. So that maybe not everything needs to be exported. So the key features now. We are located in the port of Duqm, which we already 50% own actually as DEME, which is an important factor, because we normally don't go and develop and invest in a country where we are totally cold. We always want to go where we have existing relations. For instance, in India, we are there already for 2 decades in the dredging business. We have a company in India. It's called ISD, International Seaport Dredging. But in Duqm, we own part of the port. We have a generation site of about 150 square kilometers, which is quite big. It's actually more than the port of Antwerp, which is the second biggest port in Europe, has in square kilometers. So it's a massive site. We are going to target, first of all, a 500 megawatt electrolyzer for phase 1, which if we combine this with a high amount of full load hours, just shy of 6,000 full load hours is the sweet spot. This requires then about almost 1,400 megawatt of renewable power generation. The mixture between wind and solar is the result of quite extensive time series modeling, so it's not a coincidence. There's time series modeling behind it. With that, we will produce about 60,000 tons of green hydrogen, which we will convert to about 330,000 tons of green ammonia per year. If you think that you can have green ammonia carriers of say between 15 and 30,000 tons per vessel, then you have like 10 to 20 shipments per year, right? So it's not like that every day a ship has to come. We share with local facility the seawater intake for the Demin water. We're having the actual electrolyzer and the ammonia factory in the port. We have about 50-kilometer trunk line from the port to the generation site. this is so long because in between there is an airport, there is housing, there are all sorts of other infrastructure facilities, with that we of course have to tackle the question who's going to be the off-taker, right? Because DEME is many things, but we are not a commodity player in the sense that we can also secure the off-take. For that, we have found the German company Uniper. Uniper is one of the biggest energy companies in Europe. They have 37,000 megawatt of own power generation, and they are one of the biggest gas and LNG traders in the world. So we have concluded an agreement with Uniper to work with us, A, as owners engineers, and B, as exclusive off-takers for phase one. Finally, here to this slide, we need to bank finance. All of our projects as DEME, as investors, are project finance. So therefore, the project has to be completely bankable in all of its aspects, whether it's the EPCI structure, whether it's the off-take structure, all of it needs to be completely bankable. So the setup for us is that we, together with our partners OQ, formerly known as Oman Oil, but now they're called OQ, we are 50-50 partners in developing this project. There is room for additional investors to come in, and the whole value chain, as I've said already, is PV, wind, potentially battery deployment, potentially. I come back to that. We produce hydrogen, we convert it to ammonia, and have in the end 100% green ammonia at this point in time. I skipped this one. This is for those who will want to read it later, a short description of who the project sponsors are. DEME and OQ are the sponsors. Uniper is the off-taker. I want to show you something that is, of course, far too detailed, and don't expect me to go onto every line, but I just want to demonstrate that it's quite easy to talk about the big lines and decarbonization and this and that, but this is what is really behind this. Those are the things you need to do, right? For instance, you need the land, you need the reservation of the land. We have just put their met masts on the land to have actual measurements, which we need for project finance. Without at least 1 year of data that you can correlate to the historic data, you will not get bank finance. We have to go through the whole RFQ process, the proposals, the budgetary proposals, leading then to the actual FEED study, and so on and so forth, before we come to our target, which is that in late 2023, we reach final investment decision, which means that we have a financial close end of 23, a 3-year construction period, and can start physical delivery at the back end of 2026. That's the plan. Now, finally, just very quickly, I would like to just say a few words from my point of view about the Indian the challenges of the Indian hydrogen economy. Everyone has to make product choices. So if you have consumers of pure hydrogen, then good. Then you produce the hydrogen, and you have to transport it obviously through pipelines to the actual end consumers. If this infrastructure is not there, pipeline infrastructure, dedicated hydrogen, then on the scale that India is looking at, you either have to go the Fischer-Tropsch route. Raphael Thillot just mentioned it earlier from John Cockerill. Combined with large amount of CO2, you produce then green methanol or green methane, which is lending itself very much to the e-fuel sector. But bear in mind, please, that you need large amounts of CO2, and you need them for years and years to come, right? Not just 1 year and then next year not. You're investing hundreds of millions per project in a conversion technology for which you need, over the duration of the lifetime, you do need CO2 for that reliably, which you might have from a refinery next door. If you can't produce pure hydrogen because you don't have an off-taker, the other alternative is the one that I've mentioned, is green ammonia, which seems to be the carrier of choice right now. For that, you obviously need to mix the hydrogen with nitrogen, but that's easier than procuring CO2. Nitrogen, you can just build your own air separation unit and run it optimally. So there are product choices to be made. And when you talk about the Indian market, there is demand-side regulation upcoming. It's currently a hot topic, I understand, in India. Just bear in mind that all of those things have implications. The second thing I would just briefly like to mention is electricity grid. Of course, in the future, not all projects like our project in Duqm or like the Saudi Arabian project or so on, not all of those will have the luxury to have their own power generation, right? They will not all be in island mode. Most future projects will have to be fed by green PPAs. So there is a challenge to make those green PPAs fully compliant, fully certified green, so that the product has the green premium. You have to use the public grid, and you have to find a way to certify the green PPAs. It's a big discussion in Europe of how to roll this out. Finally, green hydrogen versus clean hydrogen. I think we have to really make a distinction between those two things. Green hydrogen is 100% renewable based. Clean hydrogen can be something different. It can be blue hydrogen with carbon capture, right? It can be all sorts of other things. But if you want to produce a premium product, and for clarity, I would urge also the Indian discussion to make a clear distinction between what is green and what is just clean or low carbon. Finally, pay attention to infrastructure. Port infrastructure will be absolutely crucial for importing and exporting the green molecules, receiving centers. We haven't talked yet today about ammonia cracking. That is that you use green ammonia, land it in a receiving center, and reconvert it to hydrogen at your country. So this was at breakneck speed my presentation. I'm of course available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. It was an excellent presentation of an ongoing project. So as a couple of, we have a question each for each panelist. I would start with you, Mr. Jost. Indian government is looking at, indicated that they are willing to do a kind of centralized procurement of a green hydrogen or green ammonia, aggregating demand from their public sector companies and using a central government nodal agency. This happens in India for solar companies. Solar demand, wind demand is done this way. There's a lot of experience in doing central procurement of green energy. If this happens, what kind of size, like in gigawatts or megawatts of electrolyzers, would interest the investments from companies like yours, large companies? For you to be interested in Indian investment, what kind of size of project with an assured offtake would you require from the Indian government as a lighthouse project? If you could throw some light on that.
Yes. We have a similar scheme in Europe that's called H2 Global, where for example, green ammonia where the demand of green ammonia can be matched with the offer. But to answer your question, for us as DEME, we need to have a certain commercial scale to make those projects viable, or a commercial scale for us to invest in. But if this is becoming a platform where demand and supply are matched, and maybe given a state guarantee to match sort of potential premium, my advice would be to break it up into roughly 100 megawatt electrolyzer lots, right? Lots. Of course, a commercial project for us starts at like 250 or 500 megawatt electrolyzer. That's where it really has scale. That has to do with the minimum size of the ammonia factories. You can't go below a certain size, as you probably all know. But if it's matching supply and demand, I would break it up into lots, 100 megawatt. That is roughly 10,000 tons of hydrogen per year, roughly, for a 100 megawatt electrolyzer, or 60 to 70,000 tons of ammonia per year. That is for me something where big industrial players can start to get engaged and build this into their equation.
Thank you so much, Jost. 100 megawatts seems like a good number. Can I go to Mr. Tillett from John Cockrell? So there's a lot of focus on R&D and development and slight priority given to PEM, the polymer electrolyte membrane electrolyzers. But of course, alkaline manufacturers say otherwise. What do you think? How long do you think alkaline electrolyzers would take to match the size and the startup time advantages that PEM has? If at all, if any advantages, do you think alkaline will be matching very soon along with other advantages alkaline technology has?
Thank you for this. Thank you for this question. I mean, we have looked at PEM many times very closely, and frankly, for large-scale industrial application, we see no match. No match. For us, alkaline is the only way to go. If you look at, first of all, the track records of the alkaline technology, the technology has been around for decades and is improving today very fast. The PEM technology, I would say, is just out of R&D stage. So that's one element. And of course, when investors are looking at 100 megawatts plants or more, I would say the track record and the number of reference will be key. I'm not talking about small demo projects. Number two, I would say CapEx. The CapEx of the alkaline technology is well below the PEM and will go further down. The alkaline technology does not depend on rare material. So there is no issue of scalability of manufacturing hundreds or thousands of alkaline electrolyzer. The third element is the OpEx. The OpEx are lower for alkaline and will remain much lower, and even degradation time. Degradation of PEM technology is much faster. My next dimension will be the ability to operate in an industrial environment. You are outside, it may be a dusty region. This is not at all a laboratory R&D setting where PEM today are working. Large-scale industrial setting, I mean, you need heavy-duty equipment, perfect for alkaline. And I would say energy efficiency, no, there is really no benefits of PEM versus alkaline for energy efficiency. The only element could be response time. So I can see that for small scale, off-grid application connected to a renewable energy sources, like a mobility station somewhere, PEM has an advantage, no doubt. But beyond that, again, for me, it's a no-brainer. Large-scale industrial will go with alkaline technology.
Thank you, Mr. Tillett. If I could also have a question for Mr. Sven from Tractable. Tractable does as an engineering consulting firm also does a lot of feasibility studies for so many different applications all across the world, and very similar applications might be people, many experts or companies would want to understand the feasibility in India as well. The way we see it is a lot of feasibility studies for different sectors are being repeated all across the world again and again. For example, buses. So Mr. Sven, if you could give us some light on how can we share these experiences globally so that we don't repeat too much of the same feasibility studies or too much of the same pilots again and again all over the world to prove the same application in roughly the same conditions. Is it all possible replicating feasibility studies in a much shorter time frame because of learnings from other geographies?
What's important to say, if we look to the entire hydrogen value chain, for sure there's the hydrogen production, but hydrogen production doesn't stand on its own. You also have the renewable production. You have the whole transition and distribution. What will also become important if we speak about 100 megawatts and beyond, because this also asks quite some investment and some knowledge. We speak about the let's say the gas handling, because you will produce at a certain location your hydrogen. It will be distributed, and then for sure you have the pure hydrogen production and what goes with it. And what we see already today, what we have already today with our teams in India, when we speak about renewables, when we speak about T&D, when we speak about gas capabilities, these capabilities within our teams in India are already fully managed on a standalone basis. So what we are doing today is really to see how we can, the experience and the roadmap that we have done with our Belgium, with the Belgium teams, from going from a rather thermal experience and going from gas experience to hydrogen experience, with the same people, with people having the same experience in India, is to accelerate this development and going to and permit them to develop capabilities in the region. And for sure, we are sharing between us studies done. We are sharing between us also experiences that we have, good or bad. We're sharing the return of experience on first projects where we now have commercial operation. This all to make sure that whenever and for every project that we have in India, that our teams can fully leverage on the experience that we have already done before. Because it's true, it doesn't make sense that let's say that the experience from first applications that we had worldwide, that the Indian team should start again from zero. So for time being already we have guys from the Indian teams who help us and support us in certain aspects of our studies for worldwide, and vice versa. In the next stage, when we will have projects in India, the bulk of the job may be done with our Indian teams, but there will be a support and a transfer of know-how from our European Belgium experts to the teams in India to make sure that, okay, India can benefit to the maximum of the experience that we have already brought.
Thank you, Mr. Sven. I really appreciate that, and it gives me some hope that a lot of timelines can be accelerated. Thank you very much. I would like to express my thanks to the Belgium Consulate and all our panelists, Mr. Jost, Mr. Tillett, and Mr. Sven, for an enlightening presentations that helped our audience and me understand the pilot projects that you are undertaking all over the world. Thank you so much for your presentations and your for answering our questions. Good wish and best of luck for all your initiatives. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gautam Raj, for the session, and the speakers for excellent insights and inputs. We really appreciate it. We now move to the session which has presentations of pilot projects by Indian companies, which will be followed by a panel discussion. Mr. Pierre Martins will moderate this session. Mr. Pierre Martins is the business group leader at Agoria, the Belgian Federation for Technology sector. One of his duties is business development and advocacy for members in areas like hydrogen, AI in energy, or energy communities. He started his career at General Electric and gained experience in the field of operations and contract management in different international businesses within the energy sector. He has a postgraduate degree in corporate finance from Catholic University Leuven. I now invite Mr. Martins to take over the session. Over to you, Mr. Martins.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. Also, thank you, Mr. Raj, for the very interesting discussion with the Belgian panel. And also the Belgian speakers, of course, for their interesting presentations on the hydrogen projects that they are involved in. It was very insightful. We will now continue with a discussion with some of the main Indian players that are supporting the development of the hydrogen economy in India. And therefore, we have a very interesting panel for you. First, I would like to start by introducing Mr. Hital Meswani. Mr. Hital Meswani is the executive director and the member of the board at Reliance Industries, a Fortune 500 company and the flagship company of the Reliance Group in India. He's a core member of the leadership team at Reliance, with responsibilities for several businesses and functions, including manufacturing of refined products, petrochemicals and materials, human resources, information technology, capital projects, and research and technology. He has also been credited with several honors and was awarded, for example, an honorary fellowship by IChemE, the Institution of Chemical Engineers, in recognition of his long contribution to the process industries. Mr. Mezvani, thank you for being with us. Can you give some insights into the green hydrogen strategy of the Reliance Group?
Thank you, Pierre. I just want to check the audio and visual. Is that all right? Are you able to hear me? Or
perfect?
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Oh, great. I thought, I mean, the case studies are represented, so let me try and share some overall insights as well as some of our specific plans at Reliance. It's an absolute pleasure to be here at the Belgio-Indian Conclave on the green hydrogen economies. It's taking place against the backdrop of our historic announcement by our Prime Minister, and heard the entire theme of independence and the very, very insightful addresses by Sri Amitabh Kant, as well as the Energy Minister of Belgium. India is obviously determined to be independent in this, independent of fossil fuels and become Atmanirbhar, as the Prime Minister calls it. And we obviously want to be a major contributor to this goal. Last year, our chairman, Mr. Mukesh Ambani, announced our mission to achieve net carbon zero by 2035, and we followed this up further by a strategy and roadmap to a clean energy future plans through announcement of gigafactories to build the ecosystem of energy of the future in making India self-sufficient. The next step for us is to navigate the energy and materials transition and the path to net carbon zero with utmost zeal. Climate change, as we know, is for real. A lot needs to be done, and as is estimated, hydrogen could, the demand for hydrogen worldwide to just counter this climate change could exceed almost 600 to 700 million tons by 2050. These are the estimates, I think, by several renowned bodies. And this could deliver a reduction of almost 80 billion tons of CO2 abatement by 2050. But the climate change pressure is so heavy that not only countering this, but this makes the life of our future generations better, and it's a responsible approach to society. Just to put in perspective, the current emissions of carbon dioxide are about 45 billion tons. So that just gives you the size of the problem that we are dealing with. And a rapid transition to a new era of green, clean, and renewable energy is the only viable option if one is to meet these kind of goals. The key challenge for India is how sustainability could achieve the aspirations of 1.4 billion, 1.38 to be precise, billion people of India as we accelerate our economic growth. And while this challenge is unprecedented, we at Reliance believe that it comes with an opportunity to rise to the next level of progress, an opportunity to create a healthier, happier, and a more secure and more resilient future for the nations and the human race. So while speaking about green hydrogen, our attention directly goes to the source of the renewable energy, and that is solar energy, as we call it. We are all blessed by Surya Dev. Solar energy available in a single year exceeds possible energy output of all the fossil fuel energy reserves in India. Taking advantage of over 300 sunny days in a year, India can easily generate over 1,000 gigawatts of solar energy on just 0.5% of our land. And while Europe focuses on renewable source, they have been blessed with wind energy as much as India is blessed with solar energy to drive the rollout of green hydrogen. Solar is also perfectly suited to decentralized energy production. And why solar energy? Because ultimately, if you don't have renewable energy, you cannot produce green hydrogen. And this is also the major challenge today to bring down the cost of green hydrogen. So various installations can be located for renewable energy close to the demand centers, so you can have a centralized approach as well as a decentralized approach. But the key thing is this whole development of the energy generation system, the corresponding microgrids, that has an equal and critical role to play as far as the development of the overall hydrogen ecosystem is concerned. Hydrogen has, as we call it, it's the Swiss Army knife, as often we call it. It is such a universal solution. So hydrogen can be used for, of course, fuel. It can be used for carbon abatement. It can be used for manufacturing steel, green urea, green ammonia, green fertilizer, green chemicals, green methanol, green mobility. It is such a universal molecule. All of us learned about hydrogen in school chemistry days through electrolysis, but none of us actually imagined that we would land up here after so many years that now this one technology is going to now define the future of the world. At Reliance, we are fortunate to have multiple options to kickstart the hydrogen economy. So we already produce hydrogen in very large quantity. Hydrogen, as we all know, is produced through 3-4 major routes. One is the steam methane reforming, what is called popularly as the SMR route. There is also gasification of coal or coke. That is another route to making hydrogen. There is the biomass route where you can fire that in a boiler or even gasify the biomass and transform it. And of course, there is the electrolysis. At Reliance, we produce hydrogen today also through each of these routes. And we intend exploiting each of these areas going forward. We will use green hydrogen and carbon dioxide as raw materials, as announced by our chairman, to develop a roadmap for new green chemicals and e-fuels and fertilizer. One of the biggest opportunities that hydrogen offers is the ability to store for long term and to be used in various forms. So whether you want to store them as molecules or electrons, storage is the key feature why hydrogen is going to have a bright future. But at the same time, it is also a challenge today. There is hydrogen can be transported. So we heard earlier in the presentation about ammonia. We heard about hydrogen storage. There's also the metal hydride technology. There is also hydrogen going into cylinders. People are talking about storing it at 350 bars, now going up to 700 bars, and sometimes even beyond. There's underground storage possibilities of hydrogen. Why hydrogen storage is important is the hydrogen gets generated only a few hours in a day if you were to rely on green energy. The sunshine is only there for a few hours depending upon which part of the world you're in. And that's why you need to store hydrogen in order to supply it on a continuous basis. Of course, when battery costs come down and when renewable power is available around the clock, situation might change. Other hydrogen storage technologies also include LOHC and absorption, but clearly compression is where all the focus currently resides and lots going on, which requires newer materials, lower costs to come down, and we are also doing some work in these areas. The other key area for the hydrogen economy to take off is the usage and the demand. So while EVs are taking off, there needs to be an equal push for consumption of hydrogen and mobility. So it's not that all assets come free of modifications. If today you want to use hydrogen in refining, as we today do, yes, that can be utilized, but again, it's not available around the clock through the renewable route. If you want to use it in steel plants, that calls for modifications, but those plants are not designed to take green hydrogen to begin with. Mobility needs to be, the trucks need to be replaced or retrofitted through what is called FCEV, which is the fuel cell electric vehicles. The cost of fuel cells need to come down, and these vehicles, several vehicles are running across the world, so there is nothing to pilot in terms of those vehicles, but one just needs to make sure that the overall value proposition to the consumer is not compromised. We see several instances of vehicles in China, in Europe, as well as in United States. Almost over 95% of hydrogen vehicles in China are buses and trucks, and over 400 hydrogen buses and coaches are in operation worldwide, even outside China, over 2,000 in China itself. So lots is happening. Trains are happening. The Indian government has also come up with tenders on trains. The cost of electrolysis, as we heard earlier today, is already at $3 to $5 a kilogram worldwide, depending upon where you are. This cost needs to come down. As you know, we've announced a target that ultimately it needs to come down to almost $1. But obviously, to achieve calls for significant things. Number one, the cost of renewable energy needs to come down. Materials have to become a lot more developed, and the electrolysis efficiencies have to improve. As we heard from the earlier presentations, several technologies also exist, and that is where I think work needs to be done. We've started developing what is called the Dhirubhai Ambani Green Energy Giga Complex, which is spread over 5,000 acres of land in Jamnagar. That's what we announced in our annual general meeting as well earlier this year. We plan to have 4 gigafactories. One of the first will be an integrated solar photovoltaic module factory. Second will be an advanced energy storage battery factory. The third will be a electrolyzer factory for production of green hydrogen, and fourth will be a fuel cell factory. Now, each of these factories contribute in a different way to production of green hydrogen. Fuel cell is required for hydrogen consumption in vehicles as well as for stationary power. Electrolyzers required for production of green hydrogen, because the way it works is there's the electrolyzer and then there is the balance of plant. Concentration of costs is both in electrolysis, in the electrolyzer as well as balance of plant. The core technology is obviously the electrolyzer. Battery is important because that provides round-the-clock availability of power, and photovoltaics, as we know, is critical for green hydrogen production. We plan to invest over 75,000 crores or $10 billion in these activities to create and offer fully integrated end-to-end renewable energy ecosystem to India and Indians. And as Prime Minister announced a goal of 450 gigawatts of renewable energy in 2030, we have set for ourselves also a task whereby we will at least establish 100 gigawatts before 2030. This will create, we will create a pan-India network of kilowatt, megawatt scale solar energy producers and green hydrogen for local consumption. So a series of opportunities exist. Our chairman announced a very aggressive target. We call it the 111 target. What is the 111 target? Which is $1 per kilogram for 1 kilogram of hydrogen to be achieved in 1 decade, which is what we call the 111 target. And now that is not only shared amongst all the Indians, but all of us in Reliance have this ingrained into our DNA. And I think this is the challenge for India, and we are confident that with the talented young entrepreneurs and researchers and innovators, India will live up to such a challenge and bring about the level of self-sufficiency that is called for. Of course, as far as we are concerned, we will be looking at working each of the end users of hydrogen. So I don't want to get into specific details at this stage because all the pilots, as we heard earlier, the pilots are not going to be different. It's our focus is more on the hydrogen production and see how we can do that. We can obviously substitute our current level of hydrogen, gray hydrogen, blue hydrogen. We believe that gray, blue, all these colors are correct as they signify the level of CO2 associated with it. But for the hydrogen economy to kickstart, ultimately, I think hydrogen production has to start and hydrogen consumption has to take off. And then specifically, as in when the costs come down, decarbonization will automatically take place, and I think it is all in service for greener and better future and a better planet. There's lots of collaborative opportunities between India and Belgium, and both India and Reliance have grand plans for hydrogen, given the urgency of the climate change situation. Global partnership and collaborations can expedite these efforts. Belgium being piloting several hydrogen projects, and several leading companies, as we heard earlier, offers some pretty unique opportunities. So let me end there, and I hope the conclave can help foster such long-term partnerships between Indian and Belgian companies, not just in the production of green hydrogen, but in unlocking the future of the hydrogen economy in India, and hopefully we can export these insights and technologies to the rest of the world. So let me end there, and maybe I look forward to hearing my other colleagues and also participation in the panel discussion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mazwani, for the very interesting insights into the strategy of the Reliance Group. The 111 target is indeed very ambitious. So let's we'll have a couple of questions for you then in the panel debate. Thank you already very much. Let's continue then with our next speaker, which is Dr. Ramakumar. Dr. Ramakumar is Director Research and Development on the board of the Indian Oil Corporation, which is one of the largest state-owned companies in India, with an annual sales of around 80 million metric tons of petroleum products. He has a doctorate in chemistry from the Indian University of Technology, Roorkee, and has more than 3 decades of uninterrupted R&D experience in the downstream hydrocarbon sector, notably in the areas of lubricant technology, refinery process research streams, and also including catalyst development. Mr. Dr. Ramakumar, how does Indian Oil Corporation plan to navigate the coming decade, taking into account the context of global warming and the need to transition away from fossil fuels to renewable energy?
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be part of this conclave on green hydrogen by the Belgium Consulate. And my views on hydrogen economy is no different from what my predecessor had just expressed. There is a great traction for hydrogen economy, and being the largest oil and gas company of the country, we are also in the right earnest thinking and aligning ourselves with the overall national direction of making India a green hydrogen export hub by 2030, as per Honorable Prime Minister's call. I would be narrating some of the initiatives that Indian Oil particularly is engaged in. You all might be aware that government is planning to kickstart the hydrogen economy. There might be some kind of a legislation or some kind of a governmental directive that some of the segments, notably refining and fertilizer segment, which are going to be initially earmarked for some obligatory green hydrogen consumption in their operations. Refining sector is one of the prolific producers of hydrogen, and they're also the captive users of hydrogen, as my previous speaker had just mentioned. So we are preparing for that eventuality. I think some numbers are going on. There is a Niti Aayog number, there is a MNRE numbers of how much percentage of green hydrogen will become mandatory for these two sectors, refining sector and the fertilizer sector, progressively starting from 2023 till 2030. There are different numbers which are going the rounds, but the final word is yet to be spoken on this. So we are preparing, being the largest refiner, we are preparing, suppose a particular percentage becomes the obligation for green hydrogen. So how to meet that requirement? We are preparing that. In fact, we have announced that our Mathura refinery is going to be the first refinery which will be converted into green when it comes to hydrogen production as well as hydrogen consumption. Given the volumes of hydrogen, Mathura refinery alone, our own Mathura refinery alone, it accounts for around 7% of our total hydrogen consumption. So if it is 10% or 20%, as some people are deliberating,
then progressively these need to be ramped up. As on today, as Mr. Meswani also observed that while there are so many technological pathways which are in several stages of TRL, technology readiness level, the readily adaptable technology is only electrolyzer technology of water splitting through electrolyzer. There's a great debate I was hearing with the rapt attention of PEM versus alkaline, and so that debate is also there. For larger scale units, I think still the preference as of now is alkaline electrolyzer. But then, I mean, notwithstanding the announcement of 70,000 megawatts of electrolyzer manufacturing, right now there is no indigenous manufacturing of electrolyzer, and the largest electrolyzer that is ever operational in the country, to the best of our knowledge, is not more than 20 megawatts. And with whatever limited manufacturing capacity that exists in the world elsewhere, in elsewhere geographies, I think the capacities are already booked. And even if one wishes to order the electrolyzers, I think 2023 or 2024 is the earliest date that many of the vendors who are on the horizon, what they are assuring the supply schedule. So in that period of time, there is a need, there is a very need, and it's a very welcome announcement by Mr. Meswani's company that indigenous manufacturing is the need of the hour for electrolyzers if green hydrogen costs are to be reduced and green hydrogen adoption has to become a reality. Nevertheless, Indian Oil is besides adopting with whatever constraints that electrolytic pathway today poses, Indian Oil is very, very seriously working on biomass gasification. We have a collaboration with Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. We already established a proof of concept, and our estimates with the kind of specific gasification pathway and the gasifier designer that we are developing, we are very confident that even today, with the prevailing biomass feedstock prices, $2 per kg is hugely possible if our proof of concept can be scaled up. So we are setting up a scaled up semi-commercial pilot plant of oxy-steam biomass gasification plant to produce hydrogen in our own R&D center at Faridabad. I think by 2022, end of 2022, this plant would be up and running in collaboration with and by far we can claim, and we are claiming that the hydrogen yields by gasification pathway are the highest that we have seen in any of these routes. So this is one pilot that we are very eagerly trying to execute and see that the POCs that are established at smaller scale will be translated in a semi-commercial scale. Then on the storage side, our concentration is mostly on the composite cylinders. We have again some very active collaboration with Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, and we are developing type 3 cylinders, composite cylinders. Already prototypes are under testing, and they can withstand the pressures of to start with 350 bar, and with a plan, with a structured plan of going up to 750 bar, because we feel that if hydrogen as a fuel is to be inducted into auto mobility segment, then the compression pressures and storage need to be addressed. This is one of the very key cog in the entire value chain of the hydrogen economy, we believe. We are also, in fact, we are the first one to float a tender and successfully close the tender for procuring hydrogen-based fuel cell buses. 15 fuel cell buses we have just ordered on an Indian automaker, that is Tata Motors. And by 2022, we are going to run these 15 buses, 15 fuel cell buses in Delhi NCR region. And we believe that this is the first structured scientific experiment wherein all 4 important elements of hydrogen, including the hydrogen application in mobility, will be tested, and there will be a standard treatise in the Indian condition. So the hydrogen which we are going to use to run these buses would be generated through 4 different pathways. One is, as I mentioned to you, the biomass gasification pathway, the pilot plant, which is a semi-commercial pilot plant, which we are already setting up. The second most important pathway is to convert the compressed biogas through biomethanation to hydrogen. This is also another pilot plant that we are setting up. The third one is, of course, the electrolytic pathway. We have a sanctioned project from Center for High Technology, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, to test all the 3 electrolytic pathways, whether it is PEM, alkaline, or solid oxide fuel cell. So we are setting up these electrolyzers. All these pathways will constitute around 40 metric ton of hydrogen per day coming from these different pathways. The idea is only to test that which pathway will give the break-even operational efficiency in running these fuel cell buses. So this is a very coveted project that we are working on. Then we are also planning to run hydrogen fuel cell buses in 2 identified iconic routes, tourist routes in India. One is Delhi to Agra, and the other one is from Baroda to Statue of Unity, Kevadia. So these are all announced. They are already there in the public domain. The commercial level, Mathura is the one which we are initially going to test. We are going to really test what kind of challenges that we are going to face in converting the gray hydrogen of a refinery, operating refinery, into green hydrogen, and what kind of additional cost impacts that we are going to face. I mean, we have our estimates, but we will be testing that. So these are some of the initiatives. Prior to this, I think last year we did a intermediary initiative of mixing hydrogen in CNG. In fact, we didn't mix physically. We have partially reformed the natural gas into hydrogen CNG mixture, where hydrogen percentage was controlled at 18%, and we ran 50 Delhi Transport Corporation buses on the roads of Delhi. This is a Honorable Supreme Court monitored project, directed project, and 6 months we have run them as normal city buses, and the results are fantastic. Whatever claims that we made, that 18% spiking of hydrogen in CNG, what kind of emission reduction that it is going to give, what kind of fuel saving benefits that it is going to give, we have just claimed it before Honorable Supreme Court, and we are very happy that we not only meet those claims, but I mean, this experiment revealed that we could meet those claims, but we have exceeded those claims, both in terms of emission reduction, whether it is CO, hydrocarbon emissions, carbon monoxide emissions, and NOx emissions. But the fuel saving, there is a substantial fuel saving benefit. So we are just going to file this report back to Honorable Supreme Court very shortly, and then we'll see what kind of direction that we'll be getting. This is a combined project of Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas and Indian Oil R&D, which executed. We have set up a partial reforming unit in one of the bus depots in Delhi Transport Corporation bus depots. So these are some of the initiatives. I couldn't agree more with Mr. Meswani that this is the only pathway. I mean, this is the only way that we can usher in the hydrogen economy by addressing all the four important aspects of the value chain of hydrogen, whether it is production, storage, transportation. Transportation also we are working, infusing hydrogen in existing pipeline network. What is the compatibility of the existing pipeline network? Those experiments are also going on because we ourselves own quite a bit of pipeline network. So those experiments are also going on, and the final application in automobile industry and the refining. So these are some of the initiatives, and we are very closely watching the global scenario as well as the Indian scene that is unfolding both on the policy front and in the ecosystem, how the changes are going on, and we are in perfect alignment with the national narrative on hydrogen. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Ramakumar, for your insights into the projects from the Indian Oil Corporation. We'll also get back to you with some questions in a minute. But first, we'd like to continue with Mr. Deepak Gupta, our third panelist today. Mr. Deepak Gupta is Senior Vice President at Renew Power Limited, which is one of the three largest renewable developers in India. And they operate more than 5 gigawatts of installed renewable production capacity. At Renew Power, he's responsible for handling the energy sector-wide policy and regulatory aspects of the business. He has around 20 years of experience working with policymakers and regulatory agencies in India, and has been actively involved in the creation of enabling frameworks for the sector. He has served as a member of several important committees constituted by the government of India, including, for example, the wind potential reassessment or the drafting of the National Renewable Energy Law. Mr. Gupta, as India's largest renewable energy company, you are of course also looking at the production of green hydrogen. Can you present Renew Power's green hydrogen roadmap?
Yeah, thanks. Good afternoon, good morning, and thanks for giving me an opportunity sharing our thoughts, our inputs with this group of stakeholders. And thanks to the Belgian Embassy for organizing this webinar, which I mean, I've been listening for last almost 2 hours, and some great insights that I've heard from Belgian as well as Indian companies. Just as an addition to the introduction to Renew Power, so as has already been said, we are the largest renewable energy company, operate actually more than 6 gigawatt of solar and wind assets just within India. Recently, we got listed on NASDAQ. Actually, in August 2021, we got listed on NASDAQ. Yes, we do have significant interest, and we have been exploring that interest with several stakeholders in the green hydrogen, green ammonia space. So because a lot has been said about actually the relevance of green hydrogen and green ammonia to the country and to the world as a whole, and the role that India can play, I just wanted to attract some attention also in terms of what are we looking at Renew Power, and at least some specific set of stakeholders whosoever we have been in touch with to seek as interventions. As most of you would be aware, Government of India has already announced to come up with a green hydrogen mission, and the contours of the same mission are being finalized by the government as we talk. And there also, there is a very clear recognition that green hydrogen, green ammonia, and other derivatives thereof are going to really not just enhance energy security for the country, but also will add to PM Modi's Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative and vision. And in that sense, sort of the volumes are going to matter. You might recall, and again, because we have spent our life, as in the company I represent, Renew, it's a pure play renewable energy company, and we have spent our life of last 11 years just being into solar and wind. So I would like to draw a simile between how solar sector evolved. How solar sector evolved from the, let's say, beginning of 2009, 2010 to where it has reached today. And what is the similarity between that and green hydrogen as we talk. So even if we talk about solar sector, the tariffs were close to rupees 20 per unit. And everyone sort of thought that it is not something that is viable at scale. And therefore, we were actually talking about at that stage, whether or not we should be doing renewable energy at scale, whether it makes sense for India, it's a developing country, the cost is an issue, and we should be really working with lowest cost options available for energy. So the discussion was more about whether we should be doing anything. And in fact, I see a lot of, while not in this seminar, but in several other forums, I see a lot of apprehension also about green hydrogen, green ammonia, the same apprehension that we had about solar energy particularly, but also broadly renewable energy almost 10 years back. And then slowly over a period of time, it took almost 5 years to us when we started talking about, okay, maybe it is unavoidable, we have to do renewable energy, but then still the apprehension was, how much should we be doing? And thankfully in 2014, government announced, oh, by the way, let's do 175 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2022. And finally, the discussion moved from whether to do, how, and how much to do, to finally how to do. And I think in green hydrogen, exactly, we don't have to go through all these phases, and we should not be going through all these phases over a long period of time. Rather, with the kind of ecosystem we have ready, the kind of learnings we have as a country, the kind of learnings we have as international community, and working with partners like Belgium, we can very well be short-circuiting all this route, and can directly get to how much and how. And I'm glad to see that that's what is being discussed in this webinar, but also I think some point in time, as stakeholders in the industry, we have to really work together and get to the government and get to other stakeholders. And there are very, very small minor issues as we are working with several of important stakeholders, buying side, technology side, also, I mean, our investors and lenders in the country. So I see a lot of small sort of operational challenges, strategic challenges that are leading to, I would not even call it slow progress, but for now, or for the timing, people even call it a non-starter, which I would certainly like to object to. But what is it that can be done? I have certain sort of suggestions on that. And I would rather like to use my 5 more minutes on those suggestions rather than getting into exactly how much do we do and how do we do and all of that. So learning from the solar success story and the wind success story that we have been having in the country, which just helped us sort of be on track for 175 gigawatt. And in fact, we have now announced 430 gigawatts to 450 gigawatts to be achieved by 2030. So there is a clear need to evolve a similar kind of a stakeholder environment and ecosystem, even for green hydrogen and its derivatives. So our suggestions or our recommendations that are also up for, in a way, actually input from this group of audience are as follows. So one, we seek for the entire sector a very strong policy and regulatory ecosystem. So in fact, when we go and talk to even some of the most visible buyers of green hydrogen and green ammonia and derivative thereof, their key question is, for example, fertilizer companies, their question is, I don't even know whether I'll get subsidy if I go and buy green ammonia, while it may be cheaper or costlier, but currently my scheme of things do not clarify. So that's a very small operational issue. I'm just giving it as an example. So those kind of policy and regulatory issue needs to be sorted at a fast pace. Obviously, it should also include mandate for green hydrogen and green ammonia wherever feasible, by talking and consulting with industry stakeholders who are going to be on the buying side and who are going to be on the selling side. And intent has already been shown by Government of India to do that. But again, that is something we suggest that should come as soon as possible. Then there has to be very clear target. I'm not even talking about just a mandate, but also very clear targets assigned. Okay, how much do we really want to do as a basic minimum in the country? And we should not forego that states are going to play a very, very important role as they have played in the development of renewable energy sector as a whole. when we also talk about green hydrogen, renewable energy will be one component of that, but even there will be components on hydrogen and other derivatives. So states are going to play an even more important role than what they have played so far in the renewable energy story. So how do we also bring states on board, at least decide and work with target states and target areas and target stakeholders as to who should be the 5 most sort of important states or most relevant states from these development standpoint, and how do you bring them on board so that investors get a very clean and a very active ecosystem to work in, rather than pushing for, or rather than wanting to push for things and investing time in coordinating and with the state government or the central government on a lot of things. Then second thing, beyond policy regulatory, the second important thing is also availability of equipment, and ideally again aligned with our objectives. How do we get access as a country, as investors, to not just most efficient and economic equipment, but ideally if there can be technology transfer happening, and to that extent equipment can very well be manufactured within the country, because the size and scale that is achievable in the country because of its large renewable energy potential, because of its large economic growth potential, large manpower that is available, no dearth of finance that is available both on the equity side and on the debt side. It is very well doable that India moves from being a net importer of let's say ammonia, but also natural gas, to becoming a net exporter of green hydrogen and green ammonia and other derivatives. So how do we make that happen, and what are the macroeconomic benefits that we would get as a country, and therefore what kind of additional support can be offered by virtue of either production linked incentives to the sector, or even production linked incentives for the equipment that the sector is going to use. Then coming to operations, when I say operations, how green hydrogen and green ammonia facilities are going to operate, they are obviously large consumers of electricity. And even on the electricity side, actually, some of the current rules, regulations, policies, acts, the Electricity Act, some of them actually prohibit open access constructs by, I mean, when I say prohibit, the actual implementation or operability of open access construct is something that is questioned by state distribution companies, by state governments, and multiple stakeholders. So it is very important in parallel to really, this is the time when we have, like, we should ensure that the amended Electricity Act and amended National Tariff Policy and National Electricity Policy should actually not just be notified, but it should also be implemented in spirit, so that energy intensive sectors, but also clean energy based energy intensive sectors like green hydrogen, green ammonia, they really get a right kind of push and support from the electricity side of stakeholders, because we firmly believe in absence of electricity side of reforms happening in the parallel, there is going to be a lot of challenge for large green hydrogen, green ammonia facilities. And while again, we totally acknowledge and understand that government has been working, but as hydrogen and ammonia stakeholder, I think now we also have to ensure, and maybe I'd use a stronger word, push the government to really come up with those changes sooner rather than later. And then the last thing, sort of in the short term, and again, as of now, I'm only talking about things that I would say has to happen within next, let's say, not more than 6 months time frame. Because if these things do not happen in 6 months time frame, I will not say we will have lost the opportunity, but at the same time, yes, it is very much likely that we would be delaying the opportunity that otherwise exists, as if it can be encashed tomorrow. So the last thing in that bit is bringing clarity on transportation of hydrogen, particularly as a gas from one place to another. So what kind of ecosystem as a country we plan to build? The ecosystem will not get built in 6 months, obviously, but the clarity on what ecosystem, pipeline, or other storage and transportation ecosystem we aim to build, or I mean, again, one could say it is a private sector job. Yes, it is a private sector job, but unless there is a comprehensive thinking happening at the national level in consultation with consumers and states, it could very well lead to a suboptimal situation on the transportation network design, either as a pipeline or by road or by train or whatever options and means available for transportation of hydrogen in particular. Ammonia is obviously certainly relatively easier, but particularly on gas. And beyond these short-term measures, which should bring up some results in next, let's say, 1 to 2 years time frame. And again, as green hydrogen, green ammonia stakeholders, I don't think we should talk about or we should only talk about 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. We should also be very actively talking to each and every stakeholder about what is it that we can actually achieve on the ground in next 18 to 24 months. And how do you make that happen? Because otherwise, the speed will only come towards the end. And again, this is a very critical learning from the RE sector, as we have seen RE sector grow, that it is very easy to keep on pushing things, looking at only the bigger and the larger picture, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the line. But actually, there is a lot more value in just kickstarting the process, even if it is with relatively smaller numbers, but kickstarting the process tomorrow, rather than waiting for a few months or a few sort of quarters. So if we start with some of these steps, then obviously would come or would pave the way for the medium term and long term goals, objectives, and the way to meet those targets. And again, here the way RE Stories has panned out, that in the first phase of 1 to 3 years equivalent, it required a lot of support, a lot of incentives, a lot of push. But if you really think about the renewable energy sector for last 5-6 years, there has been absolutely no subsidy being provided to either wind sector or solar sector, and only through certain indirect facilitation mechanisms, including things like aggregation of demand at the central government level, doing a centralized bidding for projects so that competition is there, ensuring that off-takers have good credibility and off-takers actually adhere to payment norms. The bid is structured in a manner that it is easily not just understandable, but it aligns with the investors as well as the users' objective. So some of those very, very simple, but very, very critical enablers have to be created within the next 5 to 6 months or earlier, to ensure that actually we get onto this trajectory of achieving the vision of being a net exporting country for green hydrogen, green ammonia, other derivatives, meet our own needs, obviously, even before we start exporting. And to that extent, we become the lighthouse sort of in the world on this particular intervention. And again, when we look sort of, I've been hearing again, even in this webinar, some of the other companies, and it's great to see the kind of initiatives that are being taken up elsewhere in the world. But again, I would impress again in the end that the Indian opportunity, we firmly believe, is much, much larger than any of the existing projects or any of the upcoming projects that I have at least heard about. And to that extent, leveraging that Indian opportunity is critical, not just for India, but also for stakeholders having interest in global green hydrogen, global green ammonia supply chains. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta, also for the insights into the projects of Renew Power, as well as the policy recommendations. We have to be a bit mindful of the timing, since we're already running a bit late. We have time for 2 maybe short questions. Dr. Ramakumar, he had to leave already. So maybe Mr. Gupta, let me start by asking one short question to you. I know you have the concept, or Renew Power has the concept of round-the-clock renewables, where you try to balance the different renewable energy sources you have to offer a stable product to the industry. Also for hydrogen, that is of course important, a stable supply. Can you tell us a bit how you will ensure that?
Sure. So yeah, we have one so far the only round-the-clock product that has been backed by Government of India, and the requirement there is to provide minimum 80% CUF over the year. Typically, renewable energy projects supply anywhere between 25 to 30% CUF over a year. Our mandate is to provide 80% minimum. We are designing, obviously, the project for slightly higher CUF. So products like those are obviously a good starting point for green hydrogen facility. Only thing I would like to again bring to the table is that any such value addition also adds money, also adds tariff to the renewable energy. So when a typical renewable energy project, a typical solar project, as some people have been discussing on the chat room, is about 2 rupee and 2 rupee 50 paise, in that range, a typical RTC kind of a project would actually be typically 1 rupee plus. So maybe somewhere between 3 rupee and 3 rupee 50 paise kind of range. So till that time, the optimization can be done, and one can see whether it is better to run electrolyzer for shorter duration when only solar is available, vis-a-vis getting RTC power and running electrolyzer for longer duration. So that's one would have to take, is all I would say. But at the same time, yes, it is practically possible.
Okay, great. Thank you for your answer. Then finally, one last question maybe to Mr. Mezwani. Again, to come back to the 111 target that stick to me. It's a very ambitious target. For that, of course, you need partners. I also read that Reliance Group is leading, together with some partners, an Indian Hydrogen Alliance. Also in Europe, last summer, the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance was introduced with the aim of building an investment pipeline in Europe. Can you say a bit about the objectives of the Indian Hydrogen Alliance?
I think the Indian Hydrogen Alliance is more along the, if you're familiar with the Hydrogen Council. So Hydrogen Council, I think, is consisting of members from all over the world who are engaged in either manufacturing or supplying to the hydrogen industry, production of hydrogen, transportation, banking, finance, regulation, government, representatives from each of these areas. And it consists of some of the top executives from these companies who come together a couple of times a year, and they have special working groups on each one of those, and so on and so forth. The objective being, how do we promote the entire mission of the hydrogen economy worldwide? That is what Hydrogen Council is interested with. I think the India Hydrogen Alliance, you can say it is a microcosm along similar lines, because if you want the hydrogen economy to take off, it's not just achieving one target or just one policy announcement. We don't believe that that will entirely serve the purpose. You almost need to build an ecosystem of various aspects, which I just alluded to a short while ago. Unless all those constituents come together in an organized way, in a mission mode, and in a mode which also makes economic sense, because anything that does not make economic sense would not be long lasting. And the mission should be to serve sustainability objectives at an economic, while arriving at economic goals, and that's where technology comes in, and a number of other things come in. So if they all don't come, so I think that's the broad mission of the India Hydrogen Alliance.
Great, thank you. I see, lots of similarities, which is great, of course. Then, we have to end here this session. So I would like to thank again our different speakers, Mr. Mezwani, Dr. Ramakumar, and Mr. Gupta. And then I would like to give the word to Mr. Vishal Mehta for the closing remarks.
Thanks, Mr. Priya. So I know we are running behind time, so I'm going to keep my remarks short. I learned a lot during this entire session, and there are some notes that I made that I thought would be important for all our listeners and audience to kind of recap. I think the first session, great show of commitment, both from the Honorable Minister of Energy from Belgium as well as Mr. Amitabh Kant. The highlight that I took away was the leadership of Belgium in the technology space in hydrogen, and some ambitious numbers and commitments from Mr. Amitabh Kant, which is about 60 gigawatt worth of electrolyzer equivalent demand for hydrogen, and 25 gigawatt electrolyzer production capacity, possibly enabled by a PLI equivalent scheme. I think that was quite enthusing as an overarching goal to target. I think followed by that, interesting presentations from the three Belgian companies. both from an engineering perspective, from an OEM perspective, as well as from a project development perspective. I think there was an interesting question also from the audience on, can we use these learnings to cut short the learning process or the piloting process in India? And I think there are opportunities to do that. At the same time, some of the heartening things from that, I was not aware, for example, that John Cockerell is a 25% market share electrolyzer manufacturer in the world, with a clear plan to expand its manufacturing capacity. I think you mentioned about a 1 gigawatt capacity in France, Belgium, and I hope based on the comments of the speakers from Indian companies, John Cockerell will also consider investing and maybe having a production capacity in India as well. So I think that's what Belgium can contribute to the large market that India is providing, and that market was very eloquently underlined by in the third session. Mr. Meswani, I really liked your Swiss knife analogy. I had not heard of that one, but that's a great one. I think more importantly, the point you made around very quickly piloting and finding solutions for all the 4 aspects of the value chain, which is production, storage, transport, and the end use cases, and not really worry too much about what's the production route for hydrogen, but just ensuring that we kickstart the hydrogen economy by increasing the production of hydrogen and getting these use cases going. I think from Mr. Ramakumar, very interesting pilot on the buses part. So far, I think most of us were only aware that it is going to test out the use case of hydrogen in mobility, but I think it was clarified also that it's also going to act as a test case for different methods of production of clean hydrogen, as well as the value chain aspects of storage and transport and usage of hydrogen. So I think we'll all keenly watch for the results of that pilot and the scale up. And finally, as we see the sector coupling happening, I see the renewable sector and the electricity sector now kind of coming into the play in hydrogen. And my friend Deepak very eloquently described, not worry so much about the long-term targets, but look at most, the next 18 to 24 months and create the enabling provisions and policy, whether it is around open access, whether it is around incentives, or creating demand for hydrogen in the economy. So I think all in all, great session, and I think very clear opportunities for collaboration between Belgium and India, and I hope the audience really enjoyed the conversations.
Thank you, Vishal, for summing up so very wonderfully. It was a very informative, and I'm sure all the participants have many takeaways from today's sessions. I'm happy to note that the sessions have been very relevant and timely in creating a strategic path for the development of the green economy in India. It is indeed heartening to see the extensive work done by the industry from both the countries, and I'm sure collectively this can be scaled to much greater heights. Belgium has showcased itself to be a leader in the inclusive green economy, and I'm happy that CII could partner with you for this conclave. We also look forward to such collaborations for programs and initiatives that may emerge as an outcome of today's conclave. We look forward to closely working with you for future interactions too, and I'm sure that our industry members also appreciate and value such interaction. We would like to extend our sincere thanks to all the esteemed representatives and speakers from Belgian and Indian companies, and for sharing detailed information on green hydrogen projects. I take this opportunity to thank Ms. Tinner van der Straten, Minister of Energy, Belgium, Mr. Amitabh Kant, CEO, Niti Aayog, for their valuable and encouraging inputs. I also take this opportunity to thank Mr. Pierre-Emmanuel Bresselsmans, Consulate General of Belgium in Mumbai, and his team for partnering with CII for this important session. I also thank Hub Brussels, Wallonia Export and Investment Agency, AWEX, and Flanders Investment and Trade, Boston Consulting Group, Agoria, and Gautam Raj for their contribution to this webinar. I also wish to thank all the conclave partners and organizers for this wonderfully informative session. Thank you all. See you again soon. All the best to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.